start to finish, I'm going to show you how to build this PC with all the parts you see here. This PC is going to be perfect for gaming, video and photo editing, this PC is 3D modeling, web browsing, and anything you can throw at it. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Now, starting off with the Fractal design Epoch, we're just going to take off all the side panels just to make it a little bit quicker and easier to work with. And now, since the liquid cooling unit we're using is a 360, we need to install the liquid cooling unit up at the front. We can't use the top. So we're gonna come along the side over here. We're going to remove this panel just to make it a little bit easier for us to work inside of the case. And maybe we want to keep it off forever, but we can always put it back if we want. And that gives us access over here so that we can unscrew the fans. I'm taking them off. You can leave them on. I'll put them back on later. Maybe. All right. All right, so we'll just slide all these through here. So now the cool thing about these fans is they're all attached. And the other cool thing is, since we're placing the liquid cooling up at the front, we have two spots up here for 120 millimeter. And then one 120 at the rear, so we can more than likely keep them all connected and then going into one PWM header on the board. We'll save that for a little bit later in this video. Now, this part's incredibly important. When you take your case out of the box and you prepare it, getting ready to touch the very first piece of equipment, your motherboard, your graphics card, your memory, whatever it may be, make sure before you touch any of that, you ground yourself. To ground yourself on the case, the brand new case, just put your hands on the metal portions of the case, not the plastic, the metal portions, and that'll get rid of all the ESD from your skin so you don't accidentally zap any one of your components. If you step away and come back to the PC you're building, just ground yourself again before you touch anything inside this PC. All right, so starting off with the MSI Z890 Edge TI Wi-Fi. First off, this board is incredibly heavy and it feels incredibly rugged, very durable. Taking it out of the box, I thought it was pretty awesome. But anyway, we'll take it out. I took off the wrapping from over here, and you want to make sure just get rid of all the wrapping. You definitely don't want to leave that inside of your system. It'll cause more heat for those components. After removing all the wrapping and everything from the motherboard, we're going to be installing the Intel Core Ultra 7 265KF. Now, to do that, first we're going to push down on this arm, and then we'll pull it out slightly and just release. That arm jumps right up. Actually, there's another piece right over here I missed. That releases the tray right up here, so then we can just grab this little piece of metal and raise it right up here, and that's going to reveal the CPU pins. Be incredibly careful there. You don't want to touch it. If you bend even one of those pins, you can ruin the board and they won't take it back. And that's with any motherboard manufacturer. On the motherboard, you'll notice there is a little notch right over here and another little notch right over here. That's going to match up with the notch here on the processor and the notch right over here. So we're just going to turn the processor around and we're just going to drop it right in here. There's no reason to push, just drop it right in there and maybe move it a little tiny bit just to make sure it's in there. Now we're going to push this tray back on down here, and this piece of plastic is going to jump up in a second. Just remove that and put that in the box. So with that down, we'll make sure that these two little lips are right over here. They're gonna go under that bar. So we'll just push down here and that tray comes off. So just put this aside for now in case we need it for later. And the same way we removed it, we'll slide it slightly towards the right, down, and then slide it back underneath that arm. That locks the CPU in place and that tray is not going to move anywhere. So we've just installed a CPU. So now let's go ahead and install the RAM. In this particular build, we're going to be using the Oracle Raceline Neon DDR5 RGB, two 16GB kits. Make sure to remove this tray. Now, to keep DDR5 working in dual channel, we need to install the RAM properly. Not just slots 1 and 2, we're going to be installing them in the first bank. So that's B2 and A2. And actually it shows it right over here in the little legend. And if you have 4 sticks of RAM, just make sure when you install it, you match the date and lot codes. If you're not sure on the date and lot codes, I have a video in the description below you could check out. But regardless of that, in order to install the RAM here, we're going to be installing it in DIMM B2 and DIMM A2. So we're going to want to open right over here, just push that to open it. And we don't need to open up this side since the RAM is going to be angled this way and then clicked down over here. What I mean by that is we're going to be sliding in the RAM right over here and then down in here and just push it down. And you notice that little piece clamped itself down. That locks the memory in place, so it's not going to go anywhere. For the other stick, again, we've opened this one up already. And I want to show you how it looks like when you install it improperly. You're going to want to match this notch to this notch. But if you don't, when you slide it in, it's not going to fit in, it's going to seesaw. So the way you do that, just match up the notches again. Slide it on this side first, and then that locks the RAM in place, and now you've just installed 32 gigs of DDR5. Now we're going to be installing the M.2 SSDs. For the very first one, shows it right under here, push and lift. So if we push this down and just lift it, the whole slot comes off incredibly easy. So make sure before you insert an M.2 SSD here, just remove this little film here. And we may want to use that piece of rubber over there. And then we'll also remove it from the pad right over here. We'll just take off this little piece of rubber that was incredibly attached very well on there. And we're just going to put it back in the little spot that there was back there. I think it just got pushed together really tightly, but regardless, so we'll put that back there. That piece of foam gives it the spacing it needs so that it could fit correctly in that M.2 slot. We're going to be installing for the very first M.2 slot the Kingston Fury Renegade G5. Now we want to make sure that these gold fingers disappear into this M.2 slot. If we can see any through here, we may not have installed it properly. So what we do is we'll match up this notch right over here with this notch right over here, and just push it in slightly. It'll feel like a little nudge. Then you push down on that M.2 slightly, and you're gonna notice there's a little piece of plastic right over here. We'll slide that plastic this way, and that locks that M.2 in place. Now that that M.2 is installed on the plate that goes right over here that helps cool it, you'll notice right over here on this metal strip, there's two little V's. You're going to slide those through here, and it's going to lock this entire piece right in place. And then that way we can push down and lock this in place. Now, since you can't see it, it's a little bit difficult, but not impossible. Again, matching these two V's, and they're going to slide into these two pegs. And then this piece right over here, this little hole, is going to lock right into this piece over here. So can't see it again, but it should be relatively easy. I haven't done it yet on this board. Okay, so now I feel that that's in there, it's in place, and because those two are in place, that'll make locking this in place that much easier. So we'll push down on this button as we bring it down, and then we can let go, and that'll lock it in place. And you heard the little click, so pretty easy, even if you can't see 100% this piece. Now for the secondary M.2, the same way we released this tray over here, we'll release this right here, and we'll just lift, and this entire piece of metal comes off. Now, depending on which of the M.2 slots you're going to be installing on, you want to make sure you remove the proper film from the trays, or you can remove them all, but since I'm going to be using the top one, since it shares the PCIe lanes with this M.2 and the CPU, I'm going to be removing this piece of film right over here. We're going to be installing the Acer FA200 the same way we installed the Kingston drive. Just slide it right in the M.2 right over here, matching that little notch. Push it in to make sure those gold pins disappear. You push it down a little tiny bit. It'll lock into place right over here. And the same way we did it up here, we'll just slide the little bar this way. And that locks that M.2 in place. It's not going to go anywhere. And the same way, except in a lot bigger format, we're going to be pushing these two little V's through these two pieces right over here. And there's another piece of film we missed right over here. They're hidden. Okay, and then we'll just push down. Locks everything in place. Completely toolless. That's pretty awesome. All right, now that we've installed the CPU, the RAM, and the two M.2 SSDs, we're going to be installing the liquid cooling unit to keep the CPU nice and cool. For the PC Cooler CPS DC360 Pro ARGB unit, we need to install the plate for the rear of the motherboard for the Intel CPU. So first off, we're going to remove this piece here. This is so that this piece can stick to the back of the motherboard, so we don't need to hold it the whole time. So we'll just flip the board over. After laying the motherboard on its top side, exposing the rear side, we're going to place this plate on the rear. But in order to do that, you will need to pull these out on all four sides, if they're not already pulled out on yours. And then we're going to slide this piece of metal right through these little holes, and you can't just slide one side in all the way and do the rest. You need to slide them in very carefully, all at the same time. If not, it becomes incredibly difficult. After you do that, they're all in now. Just verify before you slide it back in. And then that sticky side sticks in here, or double-sided sticky tape sticks in there. And that exposes those pieces right over here. The PC Cooler brings this thermal paste, the EX90. I've never used it before, so let's find out how good it is. It's also going to depend how you apply your thermal paste. Now, this is the first Intel I've done in quite some time, so since it is a little bit wider, I'm just going to install it the X way. Okay, promise you, everybody's gonna complain, and that's okay. After you've applied it, just pull it a little bit so that it all sucks back in, and just put the cap back on, and just put this away for later. You never know when you may need it again. With the thermal paste applied, we're going to grab our pump over here and make sure to remove this film. Many forget about it. I'm sure I've done it at least once. Okay, now at this point, we're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, and I've placed the radiator on the right side of the board since that's where it's going to be inside of the case, and the hoses are going to be in the top. Not the way I'd prefer, but the only way I can install it on this case. And so I'm gonna put it just like this, and there should be more than enough room, because actually it'll probably be just like this. Oh, got those cables in the way. Now I'm gonna drop these screws right into these screw holes. And obviously I need to screw them in, but I'm just placing them. Now with that in there, I'm going to screw this about 10% just to get some threading, lock it in place. Now we're coming on the other side, and we'll also screw in about 10%, just locking things in place. So now it's in place, it's not going to slide around. Now that that one's screwed in and this one's screwed in, you want to make sure that this screw is also in place, and we'll just screw that in 10% again to get threading. And now we'll do the same right over here. All right, now that all four are in, we'll push this, we'll screw this one in a little bit more, and then we'll do the same over here. and over here. And then finally over here, we'll screw it down all the way. When that one's nice and tight, we'll come over here to the complete opposite side again and screw that one in 100%. And then we'll do this one over here. And then this one over here. That way we're making sure the thermal paste spreads evenly, and then also we don't have pressure applied on the incorrect spots on the CPU. Everything's nice and flat. And then we'll remove this piece of film. Anything over here? Nothing over there for now. Something will probably magically pop up somehow. It happens. So as it is right now, we're ready to move all of this inside of the case, but we need to take precaution on one thing. This motherboard has a screw hole right here, one right here, one right here, one right here, one underneath this plate. So we're going to have to remove it for now and put it back in later. See this one right over here, then one right over here, one right here, one right here, and one right here. 9 screw holes, which are in the standard ATX fashion, but we need to make sure that the case has those same standoffs in the same place so that we don't short anything out on the motherboard. Now with the case on its side, we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 standoffs. There's places for more standoffs, but thankfully Fractal put them all in the right spot. Then there's also this reverse standoff. This reverse standoff allows us to slide the motherboard in place and lock it right over here without the need for an additional screw. That way it's a little bit easier to let go of the board, grab your screwdriver, come back, and then screw in the other standoffs to the board. And now holding the radiator with our right hand and the motherboard with our left, we'll drop it right in place, making sure that we line up the rear I/O with all the screw holes and then the reverse standoff right over here, and just making sure we match everything up. All right, and we drop the reverse standoff right in place. Now that we have the motherboard placed and all the screw holes matched, we'll go ahead and use 9 of these screws that come with the motherboard. So since we already have that in place, we'll just screw in one corner over here. We don't need to over tighten it, just enough so that it's nice and snug. And we'll do the same on every single hole. Remember, it's 9, but because since we have that reverse standoff, it's only 8 screws. All right, and now with all that screwed in, let's not forget the heatsink for that M.2 SSD. So we'll go ahead and just put it back there. Now let's go ahead and place the radiator at the front of the case. We'll just go ahead and put this right over here. I'll drop it right in the little hole here in the case. And that'll go ahead and align it. So now what we need to do, turn it around, line everything up with all these screw holes, and now we'll screw it in. And now to screw it in, we're going to use 12 of these screws that come with the liquid cooling unit. And we're going to make sure we use that magnetic screw tip. And then we're going to match up all these holes. So to do that, on the inner, since we're using a 120mm radiator, we're going to be using that on the inner side of the hole here for the screws rather than the outer one, which is for the 140s. Place that in here. We'll screw it in about 50%. And now we'll grab another screw. Now with our left hand or right hand, whichever you prefer, wherever you are in regards to the case, we'll move the radiator around so that we expose the hole on the bottom right hand corner. And then we'll screw that in about 50%. Now doing that exposes all of the holes, so we're gonna go ahead and screw them in real quick. 1 sec. And we're gonna do them all 50% till we're at the very last one. Okay, now this is the last one. So let's screw them in all 100%, and we don't need to force them in, just enough so that they're all the way screwed in. All right, now they're all screwed in. Oh no, what about air bubbles? Don't worry guys. I checked with PC Cooler that this particular configuration would work. They would prefer tubes down, but they said this way would work perfectly fine because of their 3-phase motor design. We would have absolutely no issue. Let's go ahead and put the fans at the top of the case. Now it's a good thing that we could reuse these fans because they're actually great fans. So what I'm going to do is, since the RGB ports on the motherboard are all at the bottom, I'm going to place the portion of the cable, the very end, right over here so that I could feed it along the back. So I'll start it off right there, and let me just make sure that it all works. One sec. Okay, so that's going to work perfectly fine. So what I did here, I put all of the fans right up here, and now I could slide them around if I'd like. I only used one side each, and I barely screwed it in. That way I got an idea, but so I have 2 fans up here, and then another fan right over here, all expelling air. So air is going through here, out, and these 2 are sucking hot air out as well. And then through the little hole over here, I dropped the cable. And the cable, thankfully, is long enough to reach at the bottom of the case down here. And then I can fit it up through one of the grommets and we're good. Let me go ahead, tighten up these up here one quick sec. Now this wasn't planned for this build, but I wanted to show you how to install a standard SATA SSD onto this case. So to do that, thankfully, it's really easy and there's a few ways. I'm only going to show you one, but there's a few ways. So we can install it down here. In one of these trays, but I don't want to install it in a tray. I want to install it into this tray, which I guess is still a tray. So I'm just going to unscrew it here. And then what we're going to do here is just flip it upside down, facing down, so that we can plug in the SATA data cable and the SATA power cable right here. And I'm going to align it with the screw holes on the back of the panel and the SATA drive. And I'm going to use these screws that come with the motherboard. After aligning the drive, I'm just going to screw one piece, maybe about 80%, one screw. Easy enough. Now I'm going to align that other screw hole right there, and then screw this one in 100%. Like the rest, we don't need to screw it in tight, but now that we've matched this and we have one in here, they all line up. And now that it's screwed in, we'll go ahead and install it back over here, matching these 2 pieces up into these 2 holes, and then just closing it like a door and screwing it in. And that's installed. So just remember, or we can always see it, but the SATA power cable is right here and the SATA data cable is right over here. If we had a 3.5-inch drive, I could put it in the tray, but I could also use these holes as well for the SATA SSDs, but I'm not sure just how big that power supply is going to be, if it's going to run into it so that we'd have to remove it. So let's go ahead and install the power supply real quick. So for the power supply, we're using a modular power supply, meaning the cables are not attached. You can pick and choose whatever cables you want to attach. I like to plan out for my build. So first off, no matter what, I know that we're going to be using a 24-pin because every single motherboard uses a 24-pin ATX. This particular motherboard has 2 8-pin CPU powers. So I'm setting the ATX 24-pin aside. So for this, we're going to be using 8-pin connected to the motherboard and 2 8-pin EPS CPU powers that will connect to those 2 8-pins up there. So we have another cable that we're setting aside. So that'll be everything for the motherboard, the 2 8-pins and the 24-pin. We're also going to be using the Sapphire Pulse RX 9070 XT, which requires 2 8-pin PCIe connections. For this particular one is a little bit different than the power since it requires more power. This particular cable, 8-pin, back to the power supply. This will connect to the power supply. And the one that connects to the power supply is different on every single power supply, so make sure you look in your manual for your power supply. And for the graphics card, this particular cable also has 2 8-pins or 6 plus 2 pin. Notice those say PCIe, not CPU. They look like they could fit, but they can't. They're completely different. Make sure you don't try to. But on this particular cable, even though we have two, this requires a lot more power. So we're not going to be using both. We're just going to be using one, and then we're going to zip tie the other side like that. And then we're going to be using another PCIe 8-pin, which also has two, but we're going to block off these two and then connect the other side to the power supply. And now, since we also have that SATA SSD, we're going to be using the SATA power cables. This particular one is a 6-pin that connects back to the power supply. So with that said, we know how many cables we need. We need the ATX, which here is the motherboard connection. So it's this one and this one. Then we need two PCIEs for the graphics card, then peripheral or SATA. We can use any one of these two or any one of these two over here and this PCIe as well. And then one over here for CPU power. So let's go ahead and connect those real quick. All right, and this is the ATX 24-pin. So connect that right in here and then to the motherboard one here. And this is for the SATA. So connect that into peripheral or SATA. They're the same. Then this one is for CPU power. Just so that you see it. CPU. This one is for the PCIe or the graphics card. So we have two right here and one up here. So we have three in this power supply. So I'm just connecting that there and this one right over here. So now let's put this inside the case. So this case, we'll go ahead and unscrew the frame over here. This actually needs a screwdriver. It's a little tight. Could have been me that tightened it. I don't remember. Put that aside. And now, since we're putting in the power supply with the fan facing down, since there is a filter here and holes, it's going to be sucking in cool air from the bottom and then blowing hot air out. Now we're going to place the frame just like that. We'll put a screw in over here, over here, over here, and over here. And we'll be using these 4 power supply screws included with the case. And we'll screw it in about 50% like we usually do, just to make sure we can cover them all. And then on the very last one, we'll screw that one in 100%, and then we'll screw the rest in. And now we'll grab all of the cables and we'll slide them right in through the bottom little hole here. Pull them out here, and then we'll slide, oops, there's one missing. Then we'll slide the power supply in. And once it's in, we'll just go ahead and screw this in over here. So we only have the graphics card hardware-wise to install, but we're gonna leave that till last because we need to route around some cables. So let's go ahead and connect all the cables real quick. Going to start off with the motherboard cables, and I've prepared a quick video outside of the case to make this so much easier for you. So one sec, check this out. Now real quick, for all the front panel cables, to make it a little bit easier for you, I'm doing this portion of the video outside of the case, and then that way you can see just how all of these are connected a little bit easier without it being so dark and murky. So starting off with the front panel header, JFP1, we're going to be using these 2 little cables, or 3 little cables. Power switch, power LED minus, and power LED plus. So we'll just spread them out a little bit like this so it's a little bit easier to work with. So let's connect the power switch first. Now you'll notice there is this side over here that is missing a pin. So what we're going to do is that's where power switch is going to be. On here there is nothing that shows polarity, so we don't have to worry about plus or negative. So we're going to connect these 2 into these very 2 end pins, again missing that pin over here. So we're just going to go ahead and slide it right over here. Easy connection. And then there's power LED. Now, not all cases are going to have it. This particular one does, because they're pinned out by polarity on this one. You'll notice there's a negative here. We're gonna connect that closest to the power button. And then, of course, the positive is going to be right next to that negative. Now the top portion of those pins are all connected. Coming over here, we have the front panel audio, which will be the HD audio connection. There's a missing pin right over here, and there's a missing pin right over here. So we're going to go ahead and match those up and just slide that right in there and make sure you connect both sides. It is actually relatively common to only connect one side. And now connecting USB 3, we're going to come right over here to this port. Now you'll notice on this cable here, there's two little pegs right over here. And if you turn it around, there's one big peg right over here. We're gonna slide that big peg right into this big hole right over here on that plastic piece. Now be careful with these pins are incredibly delicate. So we'll just go ahead and drop it right in here and just push down. And now we've connected the USB 3 header. Now for the AirGB fans, we have the PWM header, which is this 4-pin header. We can just go ahead and connect that to any one of these PWM connections. Now AirGB is a little bit more difficult because there is 3 and that missing pin right over here, but these are incredibly tiny. So what you need to do, again, that missing pin here is going to have this missing pin here. And now you're going to have to match these pins up right over here. And again, be very careful. They're very finicky pins. They bend very easy. So gently push them right through here. And now you've connected the AirGB portion for the RGB lighting and the power, the PWM header for power for the fans. So I have the case on its side to make it a little bit easier to show you this. Aside from the other connections we have, the USB Type-C is on its side instead of being up here. So you'll just plug that in facing towards the bottom and we'll just slide that in. It's a very easy connection. It's not just this on the side, there's also this SATA ports on the side. This one is not incredibly odd that it's on the side, it's just a little bit different because there's a heatsink over it. So like a normal SATA connection, you see that little L connection right over here. You're gonna match that up with the L right over here. So we'll just plug that in, clicks in, and this will be for the SATA SSD. Now that's just to show you how to connect them. Now they're going to be a little different, of course, because of the placement of grommets and everything like right over here. So for that one, the USB 3.0 I showed you, we're going to slide that right in here. The USB Type-C, we're going to slide in here as well. The front panel headers, we're going to keep down here because it's right over here. So I'm just sliding it through the back and I'll show you in 1 second. And the front panel header, like I showed you, we're going to be sliding it right through down here. Now I'll plug in the USB 3.0, like I showed you, right into here, and the USB Type-C. Okay, and once those are in, we'll just push all the excess cable through. And then coming down over here, as we saw before, we'll plug in the front panel HD audio and then slide the excess back through here. And as I showed you earlier, the power switch and the power LED. All right, so now with this pump over here, there's these two cables that come out. One is for a USB header and one is for a 3-pin connection. We'll connect the 3-pin right up here on the CPU header, and then we'll just route the cables to hide it. And the USB header that there's only along the bottom, we're going to have to slide up here or maybe through here so that we can route around the back of the motherboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it around through here so that it looks nicer. Wrap it around and then plug it right in here. So here's the cable. Just going to bring it down right in front of the DIMM slot, and then right above the heatsink, then right around, and then right into the USB header down here. And now, since we're going to be plugging in a SATA cable, that's going to help hold this right in place so the cable doesn't stick out oddly. And we're going to use the SATA cable that comes with the motherboard, and they are all the way on the side over here. So we'll just plug that in. And it plugs in like a typical SATA port would on a motherboard. So we'll just slide it through here. And then once we have the side panel in the back, that'll be hidden. Okay, so now the liquid cooling unit has this over here, the radiator itself. So the liquid cooling unit has this PWM header, an ARGB connection, and then an ARGB extension. Now, since we're all out of ARGB connections up here, since we don't have any, they're all towards the bottom. I'm going to slide this over here towards the rear, and then I'm going to slide the cable along the opposite side of the liquid cooling unit so you can't see it, down through here, and then just to come out the rear of the case. Okay, so we'll get to that ARGB connection in a minute. Let's go ahead and plug in the power supply into everything real quick. Along the rear of the case, I'm just going to go ahead and sort all these cables just to make it look a little nicer when I'm installing them. There's no wrong or right way to sort cables. It's totally up to you and your preference. There's only a wrong or right way to connect them. I'm removing the tray, not because it doesn't fit. It fits fine, but it bends all the cables, so I'd rather have it coming out straight. So back to sorting, one sec. So we'll start off with the ATX 24 pin. It's going to be right over here. So I am going to slide it right up here. And I want to make sure that all the cables slide in properly so that we can hide them all as well. And it's very uncommon, but instead of the two 8-pin EPS CPU powers being right up here like they usually would be on the other side of the board, on this board, they're over here, which is great because most of the time when you have a liquid cooling unit radiator right up here, this is blocked off by the fan back here and all the radiator stuff, so you have a hard time reaching it. So they moved it over here just to make it a little bit easier. And with that, thankfully, we can slide these guys in right up here. And we don't have a radiator up there, but we do have fans, and this just makes it a little bit easier. And again, I'm just placing everything in the general spot. That way we can get to it much easier. And this will be the PWM and the ARGB from the radiator. So I'm just going to slide it right down here in that little hole there. And the graphics card is going to go right around here. And I don't know if I'm going to keep it here, but I'm going to put it here just for right now. And since we have this cable, let me just sort it around the cable. The other PCIe cable. And then for the SATA power, it's going to be right over here. So we'll just keep it right here for now, and I'll move this cable right down here, out of sight, out of mind. And let me bring this back over here. Bit of a pain, but I don't like that it's wrapped around here. You don't have to do that, but I like to make it look as perfect as possible. And since we have the SATA data cable right around here, I'm gonna go ahead and connect it. And the L would be right over here. Okay, perfect. And since that's going to be right here, it's just going to hang straight down and it'll be hidden right down here. And since I'm already doing that one, might as do power. I'm going to use the last one since there isn't another piece of the cable coming around here. So the little L would be right over here. All right, so that's in there now. And same way we did with this SATA cable, SATA data cable. we're going to do with this SATA power cable. I'm going to kind of skip ahead just for a second to the cabling portion, which I like to keep on its own, but since it's right here anyway, just using the zip tie the liquid cooling unit brings, then I'll hide it right down here. Looks good as it is, but we'll fix it up in a minute. So now coming around over here, we have a few of the cables. We have first off the ATX 24 pin, which I don't have a good way to show you, and I should have done it before, but I didn't. We'll just go ahead, just pop that right in there, easy enough. Might have to clean that up. I'm moving the PCIe cables aside. Here is the PWM and the ARGB connection. Just putting that down here. And I'm just leaving the ARGB portion out now because we actually have more ARGB ports needed than we have, but there's a way around that and I'll show you in a second. Then up here is the 8-pin EPS CPU power. Just bringing that around from when we just hid those cables up there. Okay, so they're gonna go over here, which again is nice because typically they're over here and it's a big pain. So now the big pain is, since these are 4+4 cables, is getting them to play well and matching them up so they wouldn't go like this. I swear I've built with this power supply before. Sorry, I don't have a good way of showing you that, but I'm connecting those 8-pin EPS CPU powers. All right, so I got one connected right up here and we're connecting the other one now. We have a little bit more room now since we connected the first. And there's never a good spot for the 8-pin CPU powers, I guess, because I guess I could remove the memory for 1 second. That's a little bit better. Perfect. And now just hide all that right up there. Now what I was mentioning about the error was I connected this over here, but this should be the AIO cable, not the CPU fan cable. So I'm connecting the AIO over here, which is a pump header. And now I'm gonna follow this over here and I'm going to split it. So this is the PWM header and here is the ARGB. So I'm just going to split it like that. It's okay, you can do that. It's not damaging the cable. Okay, so I'll keep that ARGB portion going down and then I'll plug in the PWM header right up here and I'll clean up the cabling in a little bit. So that's one ARGB from here and one ARGB from these two up here. And because this has a pass-through, we can connect that easily so we don't have to deal with it. But the motherboard brings an extension that you can plug into an ARGB and it pops out to 2 ARGBs. So that's nice, but we won't need to use it. So what we'll do is I'll grab that ARGB cable from the radiator. I'll slide it right through here, right through the grommet. Just making sure I don't get in the way of other cables so that we can make this look nice. Pulling that cable through. All right, and coming around the back, I'm going to slide it right down here just for now, and then we'll sort it out as soon as I get down there in a second. Okay, so that was a lot quicker than I thought it would be. So we're down here. So what I'm gonna do is connect this part to the ARGB for the fans. Connect that right into here. I swear, even if you have amazing eyes, just getting that cable to fit the first time, third time, fourth time, it's incredibly difficult. So now with that in place, now I'm going to connect that ARGB cable right over here. And let me go ahead and put the RAM back in. And now for the graphics card, we need to remove these two PCIe slots. Now I'm just going to plug it in to show you real quick how it's put in. And then I'm going to connect the cables and then I'm going to remove it so that we can clean up the clutter of the cables. So just put these aside, just in case you ever need to put them back. Okay, so we'll insert these PCIe gold fingers into the PCIe slot. Okay, and then there's a little tab right over here. That is the PCIe locking mechanism. Right now it's open, and as soon as we slide the card in, you'll see that piece of plastic go locking the card in place. Now I'm going to push the card in. Okay, now it's locked in place. And we'll just screw it back in. And now we'll grab this PCIe cable. This is a 6+2 to make an 8, or you can use an 8, whichever you have, as long as PCIe, not EPS. Then once that's connected, we'll just slide it right into here and then push it to clamp this piece right over here. You'll hear it click sometimes, not always. Okay, so now on the second one, we'll connect another 2 to make it a 6+2 to make it an 8. And now we'll connect it to the second PCIe connection. And then push it. You heard a little teeny tiny click. Push it. And we're good. So as it is, the machine is built. Everything works. You could put all the panels back on and power it on. It'll work, but she looks hideous. She looks horrible. There's cables everywhere, and then there's cables everywhere. It looks horrible. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to shut up and I'm going to clean up all the cables and all the clutters. As it is, I wanted to get you to a point that the machine works. It'll work perfectly fine, but it'll probably run kind of hot. Clean up all the clutter to make it look totally beautiful. So let's get started. So full stop, guys. I just realized that it looks beautiful and everything, but the front was exhausting. Everything was exhausting. I want to have some intake in the case as well. So I took the radiator out, and this would normally be exhausting, but we want it to be bringing some cool air in from the front of the case. So I'm going to have to spin this around, spin them all around, and work on that. So one sec. Okay, so here is where the cable starts that feeds into the entire system. So I should be able to just turn it around, turn that cable around. Look at that, I can. All right, so thankfully they did it nicely, really easy. All I need to do is screw everything back in. And I tugged on the cable a little bit over here, but that should be fine. So in case you guys run into the same issue, I found while I pulled it, I couldn't retract that cable. So I found that it's actually hidden underneath the rubber grommet here, so that you just pull it out, slide it back in, and put it back. Now I'm just trying to make it look pretty. And finally, it is level. So we'll go ahead and put this right here. Let's go ahead and tighten it up. So we did have a few issues, namely the fans on the radiator for the liquid cooling unit. They were placed correctly to suck air out of the system if we had it at the top, but since we have it at the front, we need to blow some cool air over everything here. So now we easily moved everything, and the way that they tucked their cables, it wasn't incredibly difficult. Just unscrew the fans, flip the fans, and screw them back in like I showed you. Don't worry, you're not pulling in hot air, because the front of the case is typically going to be where you're pulling cool air from. That's going through the radiator and then coming through the radiator into your case, cooling down all your components. Mind you, it's not going to be as much airflow as without the radiator being there, but it'll still be cool. Typically in a regular PC scenario, even a little overclocked, you're not going to be pulling in heat. That's not going to be enough to heat your machine. Now, if you're hardcore overclocking, maybe 2 gigahertz over the highest speed, that might be a different story. You might be pulling in hot air. But as it is now, you're going to be pulling cool air even if you're a little overclocked. So you don't have to worry about that. The entire build was great. There was no issues whatsoever. Originally, the fans that came in the front, we moved them to the very top. We wanted to keep using them. And then the rear 120 was also from the front. So all three in the front got moved all the way to the back, and it looks beautiful. The cabling I thought also looked great as well. And then we ended up putting a GPU Sag Bracket just to make sure everything looks beautiful. And then of course, I used my little level to make sure everything was great, nice and level. We did the cabling. Since I had to redo stuff, I had to redo some of that cabling, and I'll show you that more in a second, but everything looks beautiful here. Not 100% perfect, but it looks a lot better than it did at first, and maybe a lot of you have at home, so hopefully this inspires you a little bit to focus more on the back as well. I always have a little bit of an issue down here, but either way it worked great. And I didn't put this to cover anything, there's just nothing to show. It looks good. Since I did flip the fans, I had a little more slack to reach the cable around here, so I moved everything from being shoved right up here to coming down here and then gathering around these cables, so it's a lot more hidden than it was before. So sorry guys, I showed you a little bit that I was human there by messing up with the fans, but we all do it. We all mess up something at some point, but no matter what, as long as we can fix it, we're good. This is Iggy with ThisBytesForYou doing a build inside of the brand new Fractal design Epoch case. If the video's out, you'll find the video where I install Windows and flash the BIOS and turn it on for the very first time right over here. If it's not, you'll find one just like it until I'm done with that video, then you'll find it here. So anyway, this is Iggy with ThisBytesForYou out. See you guys.